first start off a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for talking with me today. My name is Veronica Lerma. I am an attorney. I've been practicing for about 14 years. I practice primarily in criminal, family, and civil cases, both in trial and appellate litigation. It has been my calling to be an attorney, and so it's always an honor to represent the people of El Paso in any one of those practice areas. I'm from the East Side. I grew up on the East Side. I went to YISD public schools, graduating from Hanks High School, and then I proceeded to go to Washington, D.C. for college and for law school.
Great. Where'd you go to school?
At Georgetown University for both undergrad and law school.
Okay, great. Tell me a little bit about your experience.
As an attorney?
Yeah.
My experience as an attorney has been wonderful because I have been on the battleground with people. I have fought for them, sometimes when nobody else has been able to speak for them. Juveniles, sometimes when their parents won't even stand next to them if they have been charged with a case. Criminal defendants who have been accused of crimes that need to make sure that they have a zealous advocate, a fair trial, a fair chance at justice. Mothers and fathers who, in a family case, their entire life has been thrown apart in a divorce or in a custody case or in some sort of modification. And so when I represent people, I represent and I understand that they have given me their entire life. And they have put their entire life in my hands. And my job is to shelter them and take them through that storm and come out of it together.
So I was fortunate enough to speak with a couple of the appellate judges now at the 8th Court of Appeals, justices I should say. And they gave me some insight in terms of like why this race is important and what the court does and how it functions. From my analysis between you and your opponent, I think the fundamental difference is experience. From what I gather from my conversation with your opponent, and I spoke to your opponent, I guess about 2 weeks ago now. Mm-hmm. Her experience seems largely academic. She teaches at UTEP, stuff like that, and then I think she has a lot of like civil experience. What is important about your experience for this position?
Well, the thing to remember about the 8th Court of Appeals is that a lot of times it is the court of last resort for many of El Pasoans. There are not a lot of cases that get accepted to the Texas Supreme Court or to the Court of Criminal Appeals. So this might be the very last chance that an El Pasoan has to determine their fate in a criminal case, in a family case, in a civil case. And so that's why the 8th Court of Appeals for our region is very important. The requirement for a justice to have trial experience is necessary. And the reason being this: an appellate justice will take a case, look at the case, and that justice must enter into the world of that party, whether it be a plaintiff, a defendant, whatever that might be. And then that justice must remove themselves from those facts and go into the other party's facts, whether it's the state, the defendant, whatever it might be. And then once you get both sides of the facts, a clear, complete understanding of those facts, you then have to read the law, analyze it, and do what is legally right and what is legally appropriate as the justice. I don't see how you can do that without having been in trial, without having had that experience, without walking in the shoes of that person whose transcript you are reading. It's not an academic experience. Trial is not for the faint of heart. Trial is for people who are ready to battle it out in front of a 12 or 6-person jury, whatever is needed. But there is theoretical and there is real world application. And what I bring to this position and to this race is real world application. I have been in trials. I have been before the Eighth Court of Appeals. I have reversed the Eighth Court of Appeals. I know those 3 different levels, and I bring that experience to this race. It's experience that I don't believe my opponent has. And I think it's experience that if you're truly going to put yourselves in the shoes of the other party, you have had to have stood next to that defendant who is about to get a guilty or not guilty verdict, to walk that line with them, to stand next to the mother who's about to hear whether she gets to be named the primary in her case and walk that line with them, to walk a person through a divorce case, to walk a business owner through a contract case, whatever it is that they need. You need that experience. You need to know what people go through.
So, based on what you just said, let me understand here correctly. So you have practiced in front of the Eighth Court of Appeals before?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I absolutely have.
And how do you think that is important?
Well, one of the things that practicing before the Eighth Court of Appeals, of course, the appellate rules of procedure, all the basic information that you need to practice before them. The drafting of an appellate brief, the drafting of a response or reply, whatever it is that you need in your case. The oral arguments when the case is when that's necessary for the case. But also one of the things that you know in practicing before the Eighth Court of Appeals is the backlog. How long it takes to get your case heard before the Eighth Court of Appeals. How long that wait is for many people. And that's one of the things that needs to be addressed and needs to, whoever is in the position of a justice knows or needs to know that people are waiting a long time. There's people sitting in jail before their appellate opinion is issued. And my practice has included appellate practice because of the fact that when a court case has not gone our way, the pursuit of justice continues in the Eighth Court of Appeals.
I see. So let me ask you kind of a tough question. Your opponent speaks about her experience as I guess she kind of works for that court now, as like in some kind of contractual situation, or I'm not sure if she's an actual employee, but she does work at the Eighth Court of Appeals now. How do you think that is? How do you feel you measure up?
Well, I have heard her say that she's a contract attorney for the Eighth Court of Appeals. Quite frankly, I don't know what that means. I don't think anybody really knows what that means. There's a couple of problems that I have with that. She has described herself as having been tapped by the Eighth Court of Appeals to do contract work, but she has not described her contract work. She has not indicated what opinions she has worked on. I think in some measure, she has kind of misled people in terms of that she's making the decisions that otherwise the justices would make. And I think that's kind of a far stretch. I do also think that those people who practice in front of the Eighth Court of Appeals, if there are contract attorneys that are working on opinions, I would like to know, because I would like to know if my case has any conflict of interest with the person who is either reading the transcript, writing it. I mean, we do an entire identity of parties, but I have no idea who's writing or reading the opinion. I assume that it's the justices. I assume it's their staff attorneys, their clerks that are all listed in the websites, but I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, so I did probe on that, and in her defense, she did, after I asked her about it for clarification, she did say, no, I don't make the decisions. And I think it was someone else who said that she's kind of like doing the job of the Eighth Court of Appeals, like in training. I think someone else said that, not specifically her. But she did clarify that that's not her role. But the way that she characterized it was kind of like clerking for the Supreme Court. And so at least that's how she clarified it to me. I don't know if that's, what that means. But I was just curious about what you thought about her experience, versus yours on that particular level.
Well, I mean, I am aware that there are staff attorneys, there are clerks that work in the Eighth Court of Appeals along with the justices. They help the justices in the large load that they have. but I'm not too sure who else are contract attorneys, how they receive that job. I have no idea what that means. But it goes back to our experience. If the majority of her experience is being a contract attorney, then I don't think our experiences are very similar at all. I have real world trial experience in both the trial level and in the appellate level.
So let me ask you another difficult question. Her campaign finance reports came out. She raised a significant amount of money. She raised more than any other candidate running for any office. She outraised the 2 state representative candidates as well. How do you feel like you can overcome that deficit?
It's money. It's not votes. And money does not equal votes. And so whatever amount she raised after looking at her finance reports, I mean, most of them are from businesses. I don't have businesses that are supporting my campaign. I have real voters, real people, real attorneys who want experience on the bench. And so if her amount on her finance reports relates to votes, then, she can bring it forward in the polls and we'll let the voters decide on that.
Okay, my last question. If you're talking to an undecided voter in this race, what do you tell them? What's your pitch?
Well, my name is Veronica Lerma. I'm running for the 8th Court of Appeals. I have trial and appellate experience that we need on the bench, that we need for our El Paso community. And experience matters in this race. And I am the candidate with that experience, and I'm ready to serve as your justice for the 8th Court of Appeals.